Hey there, Chris, for the last installment of the CAD side of things. We made the cap, we made the screw thread, now we're going to make the mold for the cap. This is the most difficult one, I think, well, the way I do it. So we're making a component here, and this is the slug for the inside of the threads. This is something that I created through this process. It's a little less violent than trying to unscrew the whole piece of plaster from the inside of the mold. I'm going to make a sketch, circle. We got to drive this dimension because I made it a little too small. And in this video, I'm going to unintentionally mess up a couple times, like this time, and I'll show you how to fix things. So we got the cylinder as big as we need now. We're going to extrude it all the way through the top, and if you can see through the shadows of the inside, we need to go a little bit higher there. So now we're going to cut the inside out using the combine tool. So now we have a complete, the exact negative of the inside of the cap. And if we take away the visibility there. So this is different than the screw cap. It has that tolerance built in. So this will be plaster at the end of the day. So we're going to make this little bevel is really important when we're going to register all the pieces into the mold. So what we do is we extrude a little bit, put a little bit of a draft angle on it, and that's going to sit into the bottom piece of the mold. So all the little bits will line up together. It'll make a little bit more sense in a second. So now we create another sketch and draw out a circle, drive it, close. Then we're going to extrude this and we're going to cut it away. And we need to ensure that there's a taper on this extrusion, and this will come in handy later. I'm going to put it at -3 degrees, so it's kind of arbitrary, but it will make sense eventually. So right, now we have this hollow inside of the threads, and I'm going to do this a little differently, but hopefully it'll make sense. So I want to draw, create a sketch from the top, and because we have so many parts now, it's kind of hard to find the top plane. It doesn't really matter for this drawing in particular, but we're going to create a sketch from the top down. And so we're going to use the line tool and draw out, and this is going to split all of the pieces apart. So yeah, we'll be able to take sections out at a time rather than having to twist the whole inside of the threads out at once. So we just keep on drawing these quarters, and the outside dimension doesn't really matter that much, but we're just trying to do it evenly. Okay. So now we're going to use the split body tool. So we don't want to split the cap, we want to split the inside of the screw threads that we just extruded. So we got to find, that's it there. And then we're going to use these lines as splitting tools. And we just select all of them. And it looks a bit mad, but it will turn out okay. So now we're going to split it into those pieces. So now if we take the visibility off of some of the pieces that we split, we can see that we've got a whole bunch of different pieces rather than one. And so we'll be able to remove one at a time, and that'll make it a little easier to take out of the mold. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to make the tapered cylinder that we created at the beginning. We're going to remake that so we have a little center slug that comes up first and allows the other pieces to be removed in the mold. As we go, it gets a lot more complicated, and sometimes you can't find the faces that you want to select, and so it is kind of a frustrating bit at the end, but it's the easiest way. I think. And this is what I was talking about. It's just kind of, maybe it's my computer, but it's giving up, and it's not allowing me to mess with the numbers and the so what we're going to do is we're going to cancel it, and we're going to try it again. Like I said, at the end, when you have all of these objects, components, and bodies, it really helps to have a new computer, which I don't have. Make sure that it is a new body and click OK. Right, so now these are all the pieces that we need for the inside of the screw thread. So I'm just going to select all of them, and we're going to change them in color so we can see the other bits and pieces. Right, so the inside slug is finished, and all of these will be cast in silicone, so we can cast all those little bits into plaster. So now we got to make a mold for the outside of the cap. So we'll call it cap mold 1. And we have to create a sketch. And this is where we have to have some space for the reservoir or spare up at the top of the mold, and we need some space around the cap, so we have some plaster thickness. That's so our mold doesn't get saturated. So we're going to pull that 50 millimeters. Right. And now we're going to put some keys in the side of the mold like we did for the other piece. Just go back a step there. Right, and just using the rectangular tool, creating two rectangles on the side of the mold. Then we're going to extrude those two halves. And then put a draft angle on the inside faces. Right, so that's the basic mold. Okay, so now what we need to do is remove, using the combine tool, we're going to use and we're going to remove all of these bodies. This is just a shortcut. If you don't do it like this, I'll show you what happens when we do the other side. But we're going to combine all the bodies so we get that negative, and then we're going to combine tool with the outside of the cap. Okay, keeping the tools. And so now we have the outside of the cap. Now there's a little artifact at the bottom. That isn't going to make that big of a difference, but yeah, it's just what it is. I should be better at this. So we're going to make the other side, new component called cap mold 2. Create a sketch on the plane of the mold 1, the exact same size. And now we need to extrude 50, but we need to select all those faces. So the easiest way is to take the visibility off. And just drive that dimension to 50. Right. So now we want to combine mold 2 with mold 1 to get the keyway. And now we need to take the bodies away. So if I do the first one, it will leave this weird artifact in the middle. If we take this, it's hard to explain. But if we do it in the opposite way, like so. Now see what it's done? It's left that middle bit, and that's not what we want. So if you do it, if you take away the insides first and then the outside of the cap, then it'll work. So tool bodies, all of the inside, take that away, and then do it again with the outside of the cap. Just trying to find it here. There we go. Cut, keep the tools. And now we have the outside of the cap with that strange little artifact at the bottom. So we have our two halves of our mold. So we're going to select the cap again, and we're going to create a sketch on the top. And this is going to be the reservoir for how we get the slip into the mold. I quite often drive this dimension in case it needs to be a little bigger, a little smaller. Okay. So now we're going to extrude both halves. This needs to have a taper on it as well. Otherwise it'll pull the cast apart from itself. So now we have both halves. Make sure that we're on the cap again, and we're going to make the bottom part of the mold. Create a sketch, click on the face. Now we want to create a square the same size, so 100 by 100. Right. Extrude both halves. And we need new body. Right. So now we need to make sure that the bottom half will be registered with the two halves. So we're going to make some keyways in the bottom. And instead of the rectangular ones, I'm going to just make some spherical keyways. Again, this is a little trial and error. You want enough plaster around the keyway so it doesn't break when it's in the studio. And you want it small enough so it doesn't interfere with the casting itself on the inside. So we just drive that, make sure that we're joining so it's making a little sphere on the top, and we just repeat that over on each side. So I'm doing it evenly on all four corners. You could have different sizes, so the mold only goes together one way. That's quite common, but if you do it the same way, it should fit together any way you want it to. I often make a mark on the side of the outside of the mold with a Sharpie, just to tell myself how the mold fits together. Right, so we have the bottom of the mold, but this is going to come into play now. We're going to use the combine tool, use the bottom of the mold and all of these bodies. And what that's going to do is it's going to cut that bevel into the bottom part of the mold. Now this is going to allow all those little bits to slot into the bottom, so we can set up the inside threads. That's the most problematic bit of the whole the whole setting up of the mold. So now I'm just taking away the circular keyways into the sides of the molds, and so now they're all keyed in. So this is the last bit of the CAD. I'm going to move on to the printing and casting of these molds, but if you made it this far, I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching.